I've been to over 50 destinations across Southeast Asia, but nothing prepared me for what I discovered when I put these two legendary beach paradises head to head. One of them completely shattered my expectations in ways I never saw coming, and by the end of this comparison, you're going to understand exactly why thousands of travelers are making the wrong choice every single year. So here's what happened. I spent 2 weeks in Phuket, Thailand's most famous island, then immediately flew to Penang, Malaysia's so-called Pearl of the Orient. Same budget, same travel style, same mission. Figure out which destination actually delivers on its promises. And what I found was so surprising that I had to double-check my notes because the winner wasn't even close. Let me start with the first thing that hits you the moment you arrive, the thing that sets the tone for your entire trip. When I landed in Phuket, I was expecting that warm Thai hospitality everyone raves about, and sure, it was there. But something felt different. The taxi driver immediately tried to charge me triple the normal rate. The hotel had mysteriously lost my booking even though I had confirmation. And everywhere I turned, there was this underlying feeling that I was being sized up as a walking ATM machine. Now, I'm not saying everyone in Phuket is like this, but after 14 days, I noticed a pattern that became impossible to ignore. Then I touched down in Penang. The difference was immediate. The immigration officer smiled and welcomed me genuinely, not with that rehearsed tourist greeting smile. The Grab driver, without me even asking, started giving me insider tips about where locals actually eat. He told me to avoid the touristy spots along Gurney Drive during peak hours and instead gave me the name of a kopitiam that his family has been going to for 30 years. This wasn't a sales pitch. He wasn't getting commission. He was just being real with me. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something nobody talks about in those glossy travel blogs. The actual experience of being in these places, day after day, reveals truths that a 3-day vacation will never show you. In Phuket, I stayed in Patong Beach because that's where everyone says you need to be. The beach was beautiful, don't get me wrong. Crystal clear water, powder soft sand, the whole postcard package. But you know what else was there? Jet skis buzzing like angry hornets every 15 seconds. Vendors approaching me literally every 3 minutes trying to sell me something. Groups of tourists so drunk by 2 in the afternoon that the beach started feeling less like paradise and more like a chaotic outdoor nightclub. I tried escaping to the quieter beaches. Kata, Karen, even took a boat to the Phi Phi Islands thinking that would be my sanctuary. And yes, these places were more peaceful, but here's the thing that started bothering me. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was in a carefully constructed tourist bubble. The restaurants all had the same menu with pictures and prices clearly inflated. The massage parlors charged rates that I later found out were 3 times what locals pay in Bangkok. Even the so-called authentic Thai cooking class one took was filled with 20 other tourists, all of us making the same pad Thai while our instructor cracked the same jokes she probably makes 5 times a day. Now contrast this with Penang, and you'll start to see why my perspective completely shifted. Georgetown, the capital, isn't trying to be anything other than what it is. It's a living, breathing city where real Malaysians go about their actual lives, and you just happen to be welcome to witness it. I stayed in a heritage guest house in the UNESCO zone, and every morning I'd wake up to the sound of the coffee shop owner downstairs brewing his first batch of kopi. Not for tourists. For the uncles who've been meeting there since 1970-something to argue about politics and football. The street food scene alone made me question every food decision I made in Phuket. In Phuket, a plate of pad Thai cost me about 250 baht at the beach, which is around $7. It was fine. Nothing special. In Penang, I walked into a random hawker center, the kind with plastic stools and questionable hygiene ratings, and had char kway wei chow that legitimately changed my understanding of what noodles could taste like. The cost? 6 ringgit. That's less than $1.50. And this wasn't some hidden gem that required a treasure map to find. It was just a regular stall where aunties and uncles were eating lunch. But the food difference goes deeper than just price, and this is crucial. In Phuket, I felt like every meal was a transaction. The restaurants know you're probably only going to eat there once, so there's no incentive to give you the best experience. They give you the tourist version, the safer, blander version that won't offend anyone's palate but also won't blow anyone's mind. In Penang, the food vendors are cooking for their neighbors, their regulars, people who will come back tomorrow and the day after. This creates an entirely different dynamic. They care about the quality because their reputation in the community depends on it. Let me tell you about something that happened in Penang that perfectly captures this difference. I was eating at this nasi kandar place called Line Clear, which is famous but still full of locals. An older Malaysian man sitting next to me noticed I was struggling to decide what to order from the overwhelming array of curries and dishes. He didn't speak much English, but he called over the server and basically ordered for me, making sure I got the best combination of items. Then he showed me how to mix everything properly on my plate, the right ratio of rice to curry to vegetables. He didn't want anything from me, he just wanted me to experience his country's food the right way. Can you imagine that happening at a beach restaurant in Penang? Now let's talk about what you actually do in these places beyond eating, because that's where things get even more interesting. Phuket's main attractions are pretty clear-cut. You've got your beaches, your island hopping tours, your Big Buddha, your night markets, your cultural shows. These are all fine activities. The Big Buddha is genuinely impressive. The Phi Islands are stunning. But here's what started to bother me after a week. Everything felt curated for tourists, which meant everything came with a hefty price tag and a slightly artificial vibe. The James Bond Island tour that everyone does. Packed boat, rushed schedule, more time spent in souvenir shops than actually enjoying the location. The cultural show at Siam Niramat. Beautiful production, sure, but it felt more like a theme park than an authentic cultural experience. Penang took a completely different approach to showing me what it had to offer. The activities weren't activities in the commercial sense. They were just things that exist in Penang that you can participate in if you want. I spent an entire afternoon getting lost in the Klan jetties, these incredible water villages built on stilts where Chinese immigrant families have lived for generations. No entrance fee. No guided tour trying to herd me along. Just weathered wooden walkways stretching out over the sea, with temples and homes and daily life happening all around me. An elderly woman invited me into her house to see her family altar and showed me photos of her ancestors who first came to Penang from China. Again, she wanted nothing from me except maybe for someone to acknowledge that her family's story mattered. The street art in Georgetown is another perfect example. In Phuket, if you want to see art, you go to a gallery or a cultural center. In Penang, art is just embedded into the fabric of the city. Those famous murals by Ernest Zakharevich that you've probably seen on Instagram. You stumble upon them while walking to get breakfast. And they're not roped off or protected or turned into photo op attractions where you have to pay. They're just there, slowly fading in the tropical sun, becoming part of the city's organic evolution. I watched local school kids playing around one of the murals, completely unself-conscious about the fact that tourists were photographing them, because to them, this is just their neighborhood. But here's something that really drove the difference home for me, something that touches on what travel is actually about underneath all the photos and the experiences we collect. It's about feeling something real. In Phuket, I felt like a customer. A valued customer, maybe, but still a customer. Every interaction had an underlying commercial motivation. The massage therapist was lovely, but she spent half the session trying to upsell me to a longer package. The boat captain was friendly, but he kept steering us toward restaurants where he obviously got kickbacks. Even random conversations with locals eventually pivoted to them trying to sell me a tour or a service. In Penang, I felt like a guest. Not a guest in the hospitality industry sense, but a guest in someone's actual home. When I asked for directions, people didn't just point. They walked me there, sometimes several blocks out of their way, and then refused even a thank you that felt too effusive because to them, this was just basic human decency. The owner of a bookshop I wandered into spent 45 minutes talking to me about Penang's history, recommending books, sharing stories about the city's multicultural heritage, and when I tried to buy something out of courtesy, he said I should only buy it if I really wanted to read it, not just to be polite. The accommodation difference is worth breaking down to because this affects your daily experience more than you might realize. In Phuket, I paid $60 a night for a decent hotel room near Patong Beach. It was clean, modern, had a pool, all the standard amenities. But it was soulless. Generic furniture, generic art on the walls, generic everything. It could have been anywhere in the world. In Penang, I paid $35 a night for a restored heritage shophouse that had more character in its carved wooden doorframe than my entire Phuket hotel. The owners, a young Malaysian couple, had spent years renovating the building to preserve its original Peranakan architecture while adding modern comforts. They served breakfast every morning, not a buffet but actual cooked-to-order Malaysian breakfast, and they'd sit with guests to explain the history of the building and the neighborhood. Transportation reveals another massive divide. Phuket is notoriously difficult to navigate without your own vehicle. There's no real public transportation system. Taxis are expensive and often refuse to use meters. Those colorful local buses exist but they're confusing and unreliable. Most tourists end up renting a scooter, which is fine if you're comfortable driving in chaotic Asian traffic, or paying inflated prices for private transportation. I spent so much money just getting from place to place that it significantly ate into my budget. Penang has rapid Penang buses that are cheap, air-conditioned, and actually go where you need to go. Plus, Grab works perfectly and costs almost nothing for short trips. I could get from my guest house in Georgetown to Batu Ferringhi Beach, which is about a 40-minute drive, for under 10 ringgit in a comfortable car with air conditioning. That's less than $2.50. Try doing that in Phuket and you'll pay at least $15 to $20, minimum. This might not seem like a big deal, but when you're traveling for an extended period, these costs add up fast and they affect how freely you explore. The beaches are obviously a major consideration, so let me address that directly because I know some of you are thinking Phuket must win on beaches. And look, Phuket's beaches are gorgeous. The white sand, the turquoise water, the dramatic limestone cliffs, it's all there. But you're sharing it with thousands of other people who had the same idea. Batu Ferringhi Beach in Penang is less pristine, I'll admit that. The sand isn't as white, the water isn't as clear. But you know what it has. Space. Tranquility. The actual ability to hear the waves because there aren't jet skis drowning them out. I could walk along Batu Ferringhi in the late afternoon and encounter more local families having picnics than tourists, which created this completely different energy. It felt like a beach people actually used for relaxation, not a beach that existed purely as a tourist attraction. And if you really want beautiful beach experiences in Penang, you take a ferry to Pulau Perhentian or a quick flight to Langkawi. These islands rival anything Phuket offers but without the overwhelming crowds and inflated prices. But here's the thing, Penang isn't primarily about beaches, and that's actually its strength. It doesn't put all its eggs in one basket. It's a complete destination where the beach is one element among many, whereas Phuket sometimes feels like it's stretching to fill your itinerary once you've done the beach thing for a few days. The cultural depth in Penang is something I didn't expect to affect me as much as it did. Phuket has culture, absolutely. The temples are beautiful, the shrines are impressive, and there's definitely Thai culture present. But so much of it felt performative, staged for tourist consumption. The cultural shows, the cooking classes, even some of the temple visits felt like they existed primarily for the tourism industry. In Penang, culture isn't performed, it's practiced. The Kek Lok Si temple isn't there because tourists want to see a temple, it's there because the Chinese Buddhist community built it over a century and still uses it for worship. You're not observing culture, you're witnessing it. The same goes for the mosques, the Hindu temples, the churches. Penang has this incredible multicultural reality where Chinese shophouses sit next to Indian temples next to Malay mosques, and it's not a UNESCO-created diversity showcase, it's just how the city evolved over centuries of immigration and trade. Walking through neighborhoods like Little India or the Chinatown area, I could hear different languages, smell different cuisines, see different religious practices all within a few blocks. This wasn't cultural tourism, this was just Tuesday in Penang. Now let's address the nightlife question because I know that's important to a lot of travelers, especially younger ones. Phuket absolutely destroys Penang when it comes to party nightlife. Bangla Road in Patong is legendary for a reason. The clubs, the bars, the energy, if you want to party until sunrise, Phuket is your place, no question. But here's what I realized, that kind of nightlife comes with a specific vibe and a specific crowd, and after a few nights, I started to feel exhausted by it. The aggressive touts, the overpriced drinks, the transactional nature of every interaction, it wore me down. Penang's nightlife is different. It's more subdued, more local, more about conversation than chaos. The cocktail bars in Georgetown serve drinks that would cost $20 in Phuket for $8 in Penang, and they're crafted with actual care by bartenders who are passionate about their work, not just churning out buckets for drunk tourists. The live music venues feature local bands playing everything from jazz to indie rock to traditional Malaysian music. And the late-night hawker centers, where locals gather after work to eat and drink and talk until midnight, offered me more genuine cultural immersion than any nightclub ever could. But the single biggest factor that tipped the scales for me, the thing that makes one destination way better than the other, comes down to value. Not just monetary value, though that's significant, but value in the holistic sense. What are you actually getting for your time, money, and energy? In Phuket, I felt like I was constantly being extracted from. Every experience had a price, and that price was usually inflated. I was spending more and enjoying less. The beauty was there, but I had to work hard and pay a lot to access it in a way that felt meaningful. In Penang, value just radiated from every experience. A world-class meal for pocket change. Fascinating historical sites that were free to explore. Genuine interactions with locals who saw me as a person, not a profit source. Accommodation that had soul and character for half the price. Transportation that actually worked and didn't drain my wallet. Cultural experiences that were authentic because they weren't manufactured for my consumption. Every single day in Penang gave me more, cost me less, and left me feeling enriched rather than exhausted. So which destination is way better? For me, it's not even close. Penang wins by such a wide margin that I'm genuinely baffled it's not more famous internationally. If you want beautiful beaches and wild nightlife and you don't mind paying premium prices for heavily touristed experiences, Phuket will give you that. But if you want a destination that respects your intelligence and your budget, that offers genuine cultural depth, incredible food, fascinating history, and warm hospitality without the constant upselling, Penang is superior in almost every measurable way. The fact that it costs half as much while delivering twice the substance makes this one of the most lopsided comparisons I've ever done. Penang isn't just better, it's better in ways that make you question why anyone chooses Phuket in the first place.